Good morning. It is 9 a.m. on August 13th. This is the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. We start with a roll call.
Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Cross,
Present.
Commissioner Messner,
Here.
Commissioner Oath,
Here.
Commissioner Robbins.
Here.
Chair, you have five commissioners present.
And five is quorum. Good morning. Does anyone have commissioner comments? Seeing none, we move to consent. Does anyone have questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I move approval of consent. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion carries. Consent agenda is approved. And we only have one other matter this morning. This is a ECMC Finance Unit presentation, FY 24-25 ECMC Budget Overview. And I believe we're going to have Matthew Blackman, the ECMC Finance Manager, present. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I wanted to present the state fiscal year 2025 actual expenditures and kind of go over what we've spent on ECMC this year. It's more of an interactive kind of presentation, so I was hoping just to go over some of the things with you, but if you have questions, feel free to stop me. I don't want to bore you to death, bore you to tears, and I'm not going to go over every object code, so that's very lucky for you guys, I guess. So if you guys can see my screen.
We can see it. It's not in presentation mode just yet.
Now?
Now it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what I wanted to do is start with, each year we start with the budget process. How do we create spending authority, which is our caps on spending? Those budget requests start typically in March, and they're submitted November 1st to the legislature. During the legislative session, or prior to the legislative session, we have what we call budget briefings and hearings, typically in November, December. And as our budget goes through the process through the Joint Budget Committee, the final legislative approval usually happens around March. Currently, we're working on the budget submission for FY 2027, which ends June 30, 2027. So our target date's the June of 27. So we have to submit that usually around October. So I'm just trying to make sure everybody's aware. How are our expenses paid? We have multiple fund sources. We have the ECMC cash fund. A lot of people call it the levy. We get an allocation annually from the state legislative budget process for severance tax. We also have penalties and bonds. The penalties cover vendor costs for environmental studies, plugging, and the bonds cover plugging and reclamation. Starting this year, starting the year that just ended, 2025, penalties are Tabor exempt revenue. A bill passed that made all penalties for ECMC Tabor exempt revenue for us. The Orphan Well Enterprise, we collect fees and pay out of this fund for both mitigation and marginal wells. We also have multiple federal grants that come directly from the federal government to ECMC. So each year also we have new legislation that passes. We also have an opportunity to submit what they call a fiscal note, to just review the legislation, and if it has a significant, and I highlight significant impact, we could put on a cost to the bill, what would legitimately cost ECMC to do or run this new legislation. We should get about 2 days to respond. But it's our chance to seek new FTR funding, and we typically get one chance at this. If the bill passes, we have to wait approximately 2 years. If we made any calculation errors, assumption errors, those occur based on the information we have at the time. But we try to get as correctly as possible and provide as much input as possible. So in FY 2025, what did we spend money on? How much did we spend? So keep in mind all those different fund sources we had. the levy, severance tax, the orphan well mitigation, the state, the federal funding, all of those you could kind of look at as separate checkbooks. We don't commingle any of that funding. We have to keep them all separate and accounted for. So one of the things you also didn't see from whether those funding sources is we do not receive any general fund. ECMC does not receive any state general fund dollars to run its programs. So what we spent, what we spent last state fiscal year in 2025, which ended in June of 2025, we spent a little over $46.5 million in total.
Right.
This includes all fund sources, the levy, severance tax, bond claims, penalties, the orphan well mitigation fees, and several federal grants. So this
Right.
is not just the levy funding sources.
Right.
And so let's see here. One of the things I did is I provided a chart. What do we spend most of our money on? About a little over 50% of our costs are personnel or payroll. The next larger chunk of the pie is well plugging. We had quite a few studies we paid for this year. So some of that funding was one-time funding we received for studies. We also do outreach. IT is also a larger expense for us. So just trying to keep the systems running. And, as we go down, we had to transfer to the Colorado Energy Office through Senate Bill 25307 of $2.5 million out of our ECMC cash fund, out of the levy. So, and then the Attorney General's office. So those are the smaller components, but just kind of wanted to give you guys the sense of where do we spend? Where does ECMC spend? And this is, once again, all inclusive of all the different funding sources, the federal grants, the orphan well mitigation enterprise, the levy, and severance tax. I can't do it by myself. The people who should receive most of the credit are the staff that work for me: Eric Nickel, Jesse Vigil, Ruping O, April Allen, Rosalind Spangler, and Priscilla Williams. They're the ones that pay most of the expenses, the payroll, contract, all the emergencies we've done, all of the day-to-day activities, hopefully you don't even notice, are paid for by the staff. We try to be as quickly as possible, move as quickly as possible. We have multiple agencies we have to deal with. We don't just deal with DNR, the Executive Director's Office. We have this Office of State Controller within DPA. We have multiple federal agencies we deal with on a pretty regular basis on reporting of financial information. So we're trying to emphasize that we kind of do a lot with a small group of people. We enjoy our work. We're happy to have you guys ask us any questions. If you guys want to, have any questions of us, why are we doing what we're doing? There's sometimes some federal or state statutes or requirements within the grants, especially on federal grants. We do what we have to do because the grant requires that for us to receive the funding. There's always federal strings attached. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were aware that a lot of these things are occurring, but we try not to be in your way. If you have questions, you always feel free to always ask. We'll be happy to answer any questions. I'm gonna stop sharing. I kind of rattled on. Didn't want to bug you, but I just want to make sure you guys are aware of all the different groups of folks we deal with. But all of this is in conjunction with all the program staff within ECMC, that we are all in coordinated conversation and communication, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Blackman. Back to the third slide in which you indicate how our expenses are paid for, and you indicated that we don't have general fund dollars. To the layman, they may not understand that, but that means we're not using any tax dollars from the general fund. Is that right?
That's correct. don't receive any state tax dollars to run our programs.
Okay, so we've got the cash fund, which is the levy on production, the severance tax, penalties and bonds, orphan well enterprise, and federal grants. But just to put a fine point on it, that's none of that's taxpayer dollars. So that's I think helpful for folks to totally understand. And another just quick question. You indicated that when we're in the legislative session and a legislation implicates ECMC, you've got like kind of a really quick turn, 2 days to sort of analyze and provide perspective on that. Is that unique to ECMC, or is that kind of how all agencies have to deal with legislation?
That's how most agencies, if not all of them, have to deal with the legislation. The legislature runs about 800 bills a year,
Hmm.
and they're writing bills typically starting in November, December. So by the time January rolls around, they start proposing legislation or getting bills on draft paper. And before they're introduced, they'll send out a draft to relevant state agencies to get a response. And when about 100 come your way, some of them are not ECMC specific. Some are common policy, which are ECMC isn't a component because it applies to all state agencies and all employees. But that's very common. Typically, if it's a larger bill or a more complicated bill, we can ask for an extension. ECMC staff are aware of the timelines, the quick turnaround timelines. I provide a training every year to them on what is needed from them. So if it's relevant to their units within ECMC, they'll know to quickly review the legislation. And if it has a broader impact, say statewide, the governor's office can tend to jump in and want to have a coordinated response among agencies so you don't have strange outliers. We're usually pretty conservative in our estimates, because if the bill doesn't pass this year, it could run again next year. So we try to be very consistent on our estimates of how many hours it takes to do some activity within ECMC.
Okay. Thanks for those clarifications. Commissioners, Mr. Blackman is open for additional questions. Commissioner Messer.
Thanks, Mr. Blackman, for being here and providing some perspective. Always useful to, better understand what's going on under the hood at ECMC. And I think it's good for us as commissioners. I also think it's good for the public to be able to better understand how the agency functions. And so thanks for being willing to present to us. So understanding that production varies year to year, how does the budgeting work kind of looking forward with some uncertainty as far as what revenues may actually be coming in?
Well, I do a revenue forecast every year as well, as required by the budget. And in looking at the revenue forecast, that if for some reason the revenue looks like it's not going to come in, we are allowed to keep what they call fund balance, which is like a savings account for those variations. Price and production varies. And as you saw, we're trying to estimate that price and production through June of 27. So that can change quite quickly based on a lot of different variables. So we try to be very conservative in our estimate and use multiple sources of data so we can estimate our revenue. And if some years we may collect a little bit more, some years we collect a little bit less, so we could dip into that fund, add to the fund balance, so add to your savings account, subtract from your savings account year over year for the variability. We can typically, we're typically very close. We're usually within 1 to 2% of our forecast. So that's pretty darn close if you look at budgeting in 18 months out. of a very volatile commodity.
Great. Well, thanks again for being here and sharing your perspective.
Yeah. Any questions I'm open for?
Other questions from folks? Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation today, on behalf of the commissioners as well as the public who's listened in.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, short agenda today. That was it. Anything further? Seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we'll see you next week for a little bit of a bigger agenda. Thanks.